over the last couple months, I've been vocal about Tee Higgins. And through these 2 seasons, he's garnered over 100 targets, 60 receptions, and 900 yards with 6 touchdowns in both of those. Just last year, 14 games over 1,000. But then I'm like, how much of this is in my brain playing a trick on
Yep.
me? Or am I trying to associate some of these sounds or potential movements I'm seeing in the dark to a ghost or whatever?
Hello and welcome back. This is episode 6 of Player Normal Activity. Thank you for joining us, whether you're listening after the fact or watching this at the premiere. I am your host, Kraig Reith, and with me today is a special guest. We have Corey Spala. Corey is a author and contributor for Dynasty League Football. He's a host of the Load the Wagon show over on YouTube and also a host of the Coming Off the Edge show on YouTube. You can find that on Twitter as well. You can find him on Twitter that's CoreySpala. Corey, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, more so because you actually said my last name correctly. Most people say it wrong and say Spala, but thank you so much for saying it, Spala. That really got me going here. So I'm ready, excited to be here for Player Normal Activity with Kraig over at Roto Heat on YouTube. Love it.
You're sort of all over the place with the stuff that you do, and I just love it. And the threads that you have there on Twitter when you're talking about really deep tight ends that you're a fan of, there's all sorts of good stuff. So make sure you're following Corey and all of his great content. But today we're here specifically to talk about a guy that I know Corey gets fired up for as well, and that is Tee Higgins. I know I've had some back and forth fun with you on Tee Higgins, but I know you're really excited about him coming up here and for Dynasty in general. So tell me what you're liking about Tee Higgins and his situation going forward.
Yes, that is correct. So, speaking on T. Higgins, like I've been vocal about players before, Christian Kirk, all these players who may not be flashy. So I've been trying to be more vocal about quality rather than quantity. So over the last couple months, I've been vocal about T. Higgins. And through these 2 seasons, he's garnered over 100 targets, 60 receptions, and 900 yards with 6 touchdowns in both of those. Just last year, 14 games over 1,000. He improved on his rookie year. He had 7 more receptions, 183 more yards, despite playing 2 less games. And we can likely assume this is due to playing with Joe Burrow for the entire season. But the best part about Higgins' second NFL season is playing alongside with 5th overall selection Jamar Chase, the presumed alpha in the offense. Chase undoubtedly had the better season, and he posted a historic rookie season with 1,455 yards and 13 touchdowns. But I am here to tell the world that Tee Higgins is a top 5 dynasty wide receiver. But okay, it's a little more fun to say he's a top 5 wide receiver when he's pretty much just 5th overall to me. And it doesn't really bother me he's in an offense with Jamar Chase when we just saw that offense work out last year in 2021. The Bengals have made the transactions to upgrade their offensive line as Burrow was sacked the most in 2021 with 51 sacks. For reference, Mahomes was sacked 28 times. And whatever that offensive line will help run game more, they got Joe Mixon. They brought in Hayden Hurst after losing out on CJ Uzoma. Can't forget about Tyler Boyd either. So the defenses, they can't just take away Chase and Higgins. There's so much to worry about. So I'm not really too concerned with, if you want to argue about too many mouths to feed, which I'll be releasing an article about that soon. But let's look back at Tee Higgins. So this is courtesy of Player Profile, all their stats and data. So his season total stats suffered because he did miss those 3 games. He still finished 27th in targets, 20th in yards, or 20th in touchdowns, sorry. Then he finished 15th in yards, again, despite missing those 3 games. Let's get a little more into it. He was 12th in route participation, as well as 12th in expected points added. Not only that, 10th in yards per route ran, 8th in yards per target, and he was 7th in expected fantasy points per game. Pretty solid second-year guy playing alongside Jamar Chase. So when we look at the season, something changed after the Bengals bye week. I hit up Taylor Cornell, my resident Bengals guy, and we were talking, and he was pretty much saying the Bengals started to have more early down throws, which then translated to their offense exploding, aka they just got more aggressive. So when we look at that bye week, from week 12 on, Higgins had 107.5 yards per game, which was second behind Cooper Kupp. And this didn't include any playoff games where Higgins had over 96 yards in those 3 games. So let's have a little fun with this. Shout out to Jeff Bell. Let's play this extrapolation game with those stats. If we average those, it would be 8.3 targets, 6.2 receptions, 107.5 yards, which would equal for a season long total 141.1 targets, 105.4 receptions, and 1,827.5 yards, which extrapolation game is fun, but that was only like 6, 7 games. Would that hold up for a whole 17 games? Not really, but it's just important to know that he is still going to produce when given the chance, especially if this offense continues to be a little more aggressive moving forward.
That's one of the questions I have for you. And I know, speaking to Taylor and some other Bengals fans, they were not happy with Zach Taylor at all. So did you think that this is just a shift in how they're going to be running that offense and with that change that occurred? Or do you have some trepidation at all? It doesn't sound like it, but that maybe that's just how the season ran last year, and that's not really going to be the change moving forward? Because people are ready to fire him as far as Bengals fans.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not too sure on how to speak on that, especially given I'm not in the Bengals community. I know some people didn't like him, especially after the first couple seasons, but this last year, making it to the Super Bowl, third year after being hired, that's pretty solid. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. They made a change. The offense exploded after that. Higgins extremely benefited from that because when you look at when Jamar Chase and Tee Higgins played together in those 14 games, they both had 110 targets. So it's not, Chase was going to demand the total targets. Boyd is the one that suffered because the Bengals have two alphas in that offense in Chase and Higgins.
Yeah, Boyd suffered a lot. Just if you look at his targets, went from 148 to 110 to 94 over the past 3 years. His yards went down as well. And I do think people forget that when you're talking about physically, you're comparing Tee Higgins to Jamar Chase. Tee Higgins is a lot bigger than Jamar Chase. If you're talking about when they get down to the red zone, who's the bigger receiver that may get targeted more? Tee Higgins is around 6'4", Jamar's 6 foot. And Tee Higgins isn't a slouch. He was a big name receiver coming out of high school into college. He performed well at Clemson, especially the last 2 years. He was in that sort of pro style ready offense. And yeah, I think people were maybe a little bit disappointed that first year, but there were a lot of factors that went into that. And sometimes we do forget rookie receivers aren't immediately going to come into the league and blow it up like we've seen a few of them do the past couple of years. I do like Tee Higgins. I just found it when you originally put that out on Twitter. He's a top 5 for you. Doesn't seem to be consensus, but I like that too. You're calling your shot and you have the information to back it up. Different sites across here, I think DLF has him as consensus highest at wide receiver 7 for Dynasty. A couple other sites have him like that 11, 15. But he's certainly a wide receiver 1. I don't have a problem disagreeing with that when you're looking at leagues. I think he belongs in the top 10, but top 5 was spicy to me. But you do make a compelling case. I'm curious if you have your rankings with you. Who do you have ahead of him for the other 4?
Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, and then you could argue people like A.J. Brown, Cooper Kupp. So I don't have a set rankings like that, but I just know I'm aware that there are other receivers who warrant the nod over him. But it comes down to one of my favorite artists, Marlon Craft. He had a lyric that says, to recognize a goat before the herd is a skill. They were quick to judge, but never heard the appeal. And I just think in Dynasty, you need to be ahead a little bit of the herd and recognize that these players are going to be beneficial, especially moving forward. But when you think about it, there are some types of ranking styles that are more immediate, where Cooper Kupp can be a top 3, 4, 5 guy. Or if you're going to play a couple years down the road, someone like Higgins can easily jump in. CeeDee Lamb definitely warrants a consideration. But if you have CeeDee Lamb in your top 5, I believe Higgins should automatically as well be in that top 5. And just because Amari Cooper is gone, that doesn't mean Lamb's going to be the de facto alpha wide receiver. Just through his 2 seasons, he had a 63rd and 37th overall target share. And that's not really how an alpha earns targets. Like just last year, despite missing those 3 games, Higgins commanded a 20.4% target share. And who knows what that could have been when he was playing the 3 more games. Like we know that what we have in this Bengals offense, 2 stud receivers, elite quarterback. And like you alluded to, Chase has that explosive big play ability. That's flashes and it's that shiny new toy. But you said Higgins 6'4". His role is if he's catching 30, 40, 50-yard passes, like 1 or 2 a game, plus the red zone threat, he doesn't need to get a lot of targets. But again, they both had 110 targets each in those 14 games playing together.
Yeah, and he's young too. He's going to be 23 this whole season. And
Exactly.
even if you're one of these ageist people in Dynasty that we see all the time, he's probably got a good 6, 7 years at least ahead of him in what should be an offense that they're going to want to keep together there with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. A lot of things left to play out, but man, what a great situation to be in for a wide receiver.
Yeah, absolutely. It will be interesting because they do have to pay Jesse Bates, their stud star, superstar safety.
Yep.
Then it's Burrow is going to need to be paid. It's Chase is, all these players are going to be need paid. So it'll be interesting to see how they handle the cap because obviously you're going to want to keep Higgins, Chase with Burrow for, like you said, 6, 7 years. So if Higgins does transition out, it'll be interesting to see. But I think he was a second round pick. This is his third year. So he has this year and next year at least signed. Something interesting about the contracts is Boyd's contract will be done when Higgins will need to be paid. So Boyd, I heard, is a great locker room guy, and he's getting paid that 10 to 15 million. That's going to be away when Higgins is going to be need paid. So hopefully they could use that money for Higgins. In Dynasty, you do need to be fluid with these changes, but his talent, his skill, that's not going to change despite where he goes if he does leave the Bengals. So shout out to Higgins. Again, top 5, yeah, like you said, it is a little spicy, but I'm just trying to be a little bit ahead of the herd, especially because he does have that immediate impact. I know we did that extrapolation. Without it, he still had 1,000 yards in 14 games, 110 targets. His receptions are low, but he's going to get those big plays, which you get a 50-yard play, that's 5 points if you're in PPR, +1 for the catch. That's 6 points right there on one play. So he doesn't need to be a reception hog to necessarily give you those big games. His ceiling's high. He had a couple of those multi-touchdown games, a 43-point game there in week 17. He might just be around 13, 14, 15 type of guy, but we're going to be super happy with those points, especially if you're in double digits. He only had 4 games last year under 10 PPR, and one of them was a 9.3 or 9.5. You're going to get your boom bust games. Justin Jefferson only had 1. Chase had 3. CeeDee Lamb had 6 games under 10 PPR. It does happen. Obviously, you do not want it. But Higgins' boom games, they're going to win you more weeks than his dud games will probably lose you weeks.
So I'm guessing you have a lot of Tee Higgins shares already in fantasy leagues, but have you gone out there and tried to acquire him or seen any other trades where his value, Jamar Chase really is seen as the guy there by most people, rightfully so, I think. But
Yeah.
have you seen that give any sort of discount to Tee Higgins in trades?
I could check DLF's trade finder tool over there. I have tried, obviously, but my friends who are in my home leagues who have Tee Higgins, they see me say these things, and then I get like that, oh, you got to pay double. I do have a little bit. In a couple of leagues, Jeff traded up the pick before me to snag Tee Higgins for me, so that was really rude. I am trying to get it. Tee Higgins, a lot of people notice. I had a guy in a league, a Twitter league, that saw my tweet and he was like, at Corey, yo, you really believe he's top 5? And then put him on the board immediately. That's what the trouble with being a little vocal on Twitter about your opinions is. Some people might catch on to it and be like, if you believe in it, come get it. I'll try. Obviously, like you said, there is a Chase discount. Many people don't believe that Higgins can be this top guy, but like you said, DLF has him at 7. I think undroppables, last I checked, was 6 or 8. Keep trade cut was like 11. So people are aware, like you said, you do believe he's a wide receiver 1. I'm just jumping the gun a little bit, which means I guess I should put the money where my mouth is and go pay up for him.
Yep, but to your point, if that offense continues, and hopefully it would, we know coaching staffs don't always evolve as much as they should, but for a team that blew expectations out of the water, getting to that Super Bowl, they had a shot in that game. You'd think they would want to continue what they're doing there, so hopefully they do.
It works.
Yeah, I love it, and thanks for bringing that take on here. Again, a little bit of spicy, but it's not like you're saying a guy who's in the 30s or something is going to end up as a top 5. He's clearly a guy that people should be targeting in fantasy here.
Thank you, man.
And we're going to move now from the football field to the 40. But before we do that, I want to thank you all again for watching or listening. Make sure you have us subscribed on YouTube. If you like this, hit that like button, leave a comment, let us know what you think about Tee Higgins. And of course, our next topic, which is ghosts haunting. So, Corey, what sort of story do you have for us regarding ghosts?
So I'm the type of person who's open to believing these things, but I have not really have anything happen directly to me. Like, I don't disbelieve, I just don't believe. I think it is possible for these paranormal activities to be happening. I mentioned to you before coming on the show that I didn't have much, but I did say there were stories from my household growing up, so I was around them. My mom has had a few of these stories about some shenanigans happen and some pretty notable ones. But to me, I always have had some like scares or, oh no, what's going on? But then I'm like, how much of this is in my brain playing a trick on
Yeah.
me? Or am I trying to associate some of these sounds or potential movements I'm seeing in the dark to a ghost or whatever? But again, my mom has had a few of these stories and they are interesting to me. So the first one time she heard me yelling for her in the middle of the night. So she came running from her room to mine. She opened the door to an empty room. She forgot I was spending the night at a friend's house. I am not a parent, so I don't have any idea like of a parent instinct that's happening. So could this have been from an intense sleep and a dream? I don't know. The second story, it has happened a few times where she has mentioned that she has felt like a push or some type of a hand on her to wake her up. Oh, very interesting. I only wake up from those dreams where you do that little fall and like you move your legs or whatever. So feeling something push you is a little bit different than just falling in a dream.
Yeah.
The last story is a couple times she's woken up late for work because the power was out. And this, this was back when people still had an actual alarm clock that's plugged into the walls. However, when she got out of her room, she noticed that every other area in the house, the power was working. Only her room's power was out. So the interesting thing about all three of these stories is it happened in a single room. One specific spot where an entity, a ghost, whatever it may be, could be haunting or just around. Our house growing up, it was built on this like ancient Indian land where people have noted to dig up some arrowheads or some other type of relics. But on the flip side, because I don't believe, but I don't disbelieve, this also happened to one specific person in one specific room, no one else. And all three stories happen when the person was sleeping.
So, do you know, as far as your mom, was this her house first? Was it built for her? Or did you buy it from someone else? Do you know anything about the history of the house itself?
It was a townhouse, but she did acquire it upon it being built. So it was first owner.
Okay.
And like I said, it was on a what people believe to be a Indian land. It's named Navajo. So there's a couple of subdivisions around that have a Indian connotation around it. And many people do believe it was an Indian land. Like I said, there's been some arrowheads and other type of relics, type of things that have been found from building houses or just kids playing or whatever it may be. So yes, first time house owner, there was no dead bodies or whatever, at least in the house that I know of.
Go ahead.
No, I don't know what my mom be doing. I don't know.
Has she mentioned any other things happening to her outside of that room ever? I know sometimes parents keep some of that stuff to themselves, but
Yeah, my mom. Those are the three stories that that I most notably remember because they were like actually serious. If you hear your son screaming, "Mom" or whatever, and you come run into the room, but you forgot that he was sleeping over. I don't, like I said, being a parent, I don't know if there's an instinct like you just maybe you're dreaming, you hear your son yell, and then you immediately run to his room because you don't know what's going on. I was younger at the time. I wasn't like in high school or anything. I don't remember any other notable stories. She isn't open. She loves like the TV ghost hunters or whatever it may be. So she is more prone to believing that maybe some things have happened. Again, like I don't want to be insensitive to anybody who may have a real story. I'm sure there's some other good ones, but again, nothing has strictly directly happened to me that made me question, oh, is this real? Like I said, I have heard noises, maybe seen something, but I don't have like conclusive evidence that that happened to me.
yeah, you haven't had that one event that has convinced you that there's something there. And I think everybody does have those anecdotes of those sounds, or when you're waking up and you think you saw something, but you're also realizing, all right, I'm half asleep. Who knows? And you just move on with it. And yeah, I've had that too. So I know what you're talking about.
Some other friends have told some pretty notable stories, especially in an attic or a basement or something. Like one time it was this way, the next time they came in, it moved and it was like pointing at like their old grandfather's like specific item. And I don't know, there's so many stories that people have told me where I'm like, oh, that's eye opening. That's pretty cool. I could believe that, but again, it just falls down to I need to have something happen to me to make me believe.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to approach it. And I think sometimes people that are deep into it, and I love hearing the stories, want to have that experience before they're saying, yes, I believe, or otherwise just, hey, it's possible. I believe. And some people just believe in energy, like good, bad energy,
Right.
karma, things like that. There's a lot of different routes that people have for whether they've had an experience or just the belief system to begin with. And as long as people are just open to things and not completely
Right.
shut off, I think that's a good way to go about it.
Yep. That's why I like to say, I don't disbelieve, I just don't believe. yet. Who knows what's going to happen, moving forward. Maybe now I put out the bad vibes into the universe, and now all of a sudden all the ghosts and people are like, get them.
Yeah, I've thought about that with this show actually, and I don't know that I actually believe that how any of that works or anything, but I've never called into a show to discuss something because I really haven't had anything happen myself.
Right.
My parents' house has footsteps.
Oh,
Everyone in the house has admitted that they've heard it, but that's literally it. You'll be in the basement, you'll hear footsteps just walking around up there. You wouldn't be
wow.
the only one in the house, but that's it. You go up there, there's nothing moved, no other noises, anything.
Yeah, and that's probably like an old house too.
It was built in the 50s. They're the second owners of it,
Okay. Okay.
and I think the original owner is still, nothing else like that either. So
It's interesting. Yeah, those footsteps, that seems a very common thing. A lot of these stories seem to be common about you hear something in a different room that's happening somewhere else. So you're not really there to see it. Could it have been wind? And you just hear creaks in the floor or something. It's interesting. It's like there's so many of these stories. I don't want to discredit anything. It's just interesting. Have there been anything else outside of like footsteps?
literally nothing else in that house.
That's probably common. I don't believe that ghosts are like boo. I don't believe that, but I could believe that like you feel sometimes like you do just feel that weird presence. You're like, I got to get out of
Yeah.
this room or out of this area. There could definitely like so I've had I could maybe a couple of that. I don't know. Do you have around your town where you grew up or where you live currently? Is there like that one spot where people are like, ooh, there's these stories that happen around there. Stay away at night.
Yeah, there's you can even find it online if you Google it. I think it's Paradise Road in Jefferson, Wisconsin. You'll find articles of people talking about all this crazy stuff. And I did it, of course, in high school. And you drive out there late at night, you
Right.
shut the car off, you go walking around. It felt creepy, but also you're walking around in an area you're not normally around late at night. You can't see a whole lot. There is just something instinctual to humans about this. This doesn't feel safe. And again, nothing happened out there, but it's a
And
creepy, weird spot.
you go into that situation, there's going to be a ghost. There is. So your brain's already, see, I don't know. Maybe I'm just stop talking because now I'm like, oh, what do I sound like a crazy conspiracy theorist or something? Like I'm anti ghost.
I think you did pretty well to explain that you're not anti-ghost. You're just there is healthy skepticism versus just not believing anything that anyone tells you because some of the stuff can be explained away. I mean, even on you'd mentioned like those ghost hunters and stuff. They at least early on, I didn't watch a lot of the later stuff. They did go about trying to disprove some of the stuff that people heard or reflections and stuff, and they did. And I think that healthy skepticism is important when you're talking about anything like this. But also, if something's unexplained, being able to just call a spade and say, yes, it's unexplained. I don't know. It could be something.
That's what I think. That's also the beautiful thing of this is like there definitely is that possibility. It leaves it open for these things to be true. When you think of ghosts or all these things, a lot of it, at least been on TV, is shown it to be negative. But like, why does it have to be negative? It could be positive. There could just be these ghosts or whatever it may be that are making noise just because that's how they move about, and it doesn't have to be a bad thing.
Yeah, it could just be some people say it's in a different dimension, or whoever. I don't know about any of that stuff either, but yeah, there could just be some sort of energy connection from whatever and wherever they are to the world that we're in now and the time frame that we're in now. It's closing a door or opening a window. Who knows?
Something that popped in my head was like people have say like when loved ones pass away, they come back as like something like a butterfly, and then you start seeing more butterflies around. So it's very interesting. So if that's true, which I may have a little more connection with that, like when my grandma passed, like she loved butterflies, and then all of a sudden I just started seeing more butterflies around me or whatever it may be. But I don't know if it's like one of those things where it's, oh, I'm going to get a new car. I want to get a yellow car. But then you just start seeing all these yellow cars that you previously didn't think you thought you saw.
Yeah, the way the human mind works, regardless of whether any of this stuff is real or not, is fascinating because that does happen. Even some of the things where people talk about the Mandela effect or something, where they specifically remember an event happening, like someone dies. Like I know I saw the article online, people were blowing up Twitter, and you go and look and they're alive. That there's something happening in your mind there, and what that is, I don't think we really know, but it is fascinating.
Yep. Yep. Like I said, like you said, healthy skepticism. That's a good way of putting it. Leaving your mind open to the possibility of these things being true if you haven't necessarily experienced something. So I don't know. I love these stories. I love this idea, this player normal activity that you have created to come on, talk a little fantasy, but also get a little more real life, maybe get to know some of these guests a little bit more and hear some interesting stories. Looking back at this is episode 6, at the other 5, has there been like a really notable story that you remember these people
The
saying? And ghosts or
So a lot of it is anecdotal stuff. No one's had that. I woke up and there was a ghost standing over me, tried to hurt me or something, which I think is just my opinion, more realistic for what most people have, if people have anything. But in episode 1, when Nate Pulvote hit a ghost story, he was talking about just they figured out that the land that where he was living on was built on most of that area around. There had been this mass cemetery that had been partially moved, and then they stopped moving it. It's like that sort of creepy stuff where you could literally have your house on top of unknown dead bodies. Boy, you talk about negative energy if it exists. I certainly believe that.
That's definitely something I can consider too. Yeah, definitely. If you're on and you aggravate these people, like this is my spot, you get these people upset for sure. I could definitely understand that.
And then I talked to Seth Wilcock about Bigfoot, and it wasn't his personal sighting. Someone in the area where he had grown up had taken a photo of something out there, before it was like these really fancy digital cameras in everybody's phone. But it clearly is something unusual out there. And again, he talked about stories when he was growing up, like finding tracks and stuff, which very well could be something, could not. But it's all those experiences that people have, and then how they interpret them and what they find to believe about them and whether they dig into them at all, I find fascinating because I love hearing about this stuff.
Yeah. Again, great idea you've had, and I appreciate the invite to come on to talk a little bit Tee Higgins and some of my stories or whatever it may be about my history growing up in my household.
I was very grateful when you accepted the invite to come on the show and talk about it, and I knew you were excited about the Tee Higgins. And yeah, even those little anecdotal things from your mom, it really just sits and make you think. I love hearing about it. Thanks again, and let everyone know where they can find you.
Yeah, Twitter at Corey Spala. The name's on there, CoreySpala, a writer, whatever, video contributor for DLF. Come on over there to see it. He mentioned I'm a big tight end fan. I put a lot of tight end analysis out. Working on a couple articles. Right now, it's really heavy draft season. So after that week or two comes out, I have tight end red zone usage. Is it meaningful articles coming out? I'm looking at the too many mouths to feed statement. Is that true or not? And articles coming out and probably some other random stuff. You mentioned Load the Wagon. That's my Madden franchise draft show. Haven't done one in a little while. I want to bring that back up. Who doesn't like a good Madden? You draft the team. We simulate a year to see if you win the Super Bowl. We get to know you a little bit more. And then coming to the Edge Tuesdays with the Chaos Friends. We just have a good time. I appreciate you always joining the chat. But yeah, if you like fantasy football, you come to me for that, but you can stay for the food stuff that I post and the random haha Twitter takes that I throw out there. I don't know. I appreciate anyone who actually gives a little moment of time for me. And again, appreciate you, Kraig, for inviting me on to the Player Normal Activity, this fun and awesome concept to bring to the fantasy space.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And thanks again for coming on. And to everyone watching or listening, thank you again as well for spending this time with us. And remember, whether you're interested in talking to spirits or Tee Higgins, we will have you covered here on Player Normal Activity. We'll see you next time. Hey, thanks for watching. If you'd like more great fantasy football content like this, please click the link down below here.